How did California dreaming turn into a nightmare? Occupying Till He Comes at Southwest Prophecy Ministries. Welcome, friends. This is David Schnitker, your host for today's program. Thank you for joining us. Just a reminder that these programs are supported by your gifts to this ministry. If you would like to contribute to this ongoing faith ministry, which deals with Bible prophecy and current events, simply go to our website to contribute. Our website address is www.swpm.us. You will find a donate link on the homepage. The website address again is www.swpm.us. Thank you for your prayers and support for this ministry. Well, it is a real joy and privilege to have Carol Rushton back with us on the program today to discuss her brand new March 2020 Last Days Beacon article entitled, I have to take a deep breath before I get into the title. It's a big one, but it's very descriptive. California, How Liberals, Progressives, Communists, and Illegals Turned the Golden State into One Big Rotten Mess. Well, Carol, how do you really feel about this? I think that pretty well gives a summary of what your article is about.
Well, California is a beautiful state, and it used to be a great state for families. It was a conservative state, and there are so many things going for California. Beautiful weather, beautiful climate, beautiful beaches, surfing, Disneyland, the
Golden Gate Bridge,
right.
Redwood Forest.
The Redwood Forest. And, I feel like we're talking about a song now. And, Disneyland and the theme parks and the amusement parks and Hollywood. And there's so much to do and so much to see and so much culture. It's a beautiful, beautiful state. And, there are a lot of farmers and conservative people that live out there. But years and years and years of very, very liberal, progressive, environmental wacko policies, as Rush Limbaugh would say, are really in the process of destroying the state. And it's really, really sad because California is a beautiful state.
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a minute, but first I want to brag on you. You've been a regular on our program really for the whole 4.5 years of our existence. And of course, I've known you from a previous ministry for many years. And Carol has had the privilege of living in Jerusalem for many years. For about 8 years, she did some work for the Jerusalem Post and was a foreign correspondent for our previous ministry. And we are proud and happy that we were able to publish her book, Understanding Israel and the Middle East. And this book is available in our bookstore. It's subtitled Myths, Misconceptions, and the Truth About Israel and Her Neighbors. And everyone who has read the book and has given comments to me have expressed how helpful this book is, truly in understanding what is going on in Israel and the Middle East, and it cuts through all the propaganda that we tend to hear on the liberal media today. So that's just kind of a little side issue. But going back to the article which Carol wrote, I wanted her to detail the problems that have turned the Golden State into one big rotten mess. So we're going to deal with those today, but we're also going to talk about some encouraging things that we see going on in the state of California. We love the people of California. We don't dislike them. Well, maybe there are a few that we do, but we won't mention their names. Most of them live in Beverly Hills. But other than that, there's some really fine, God-loving, American-loving patriots who are doing everything they can to turn the tide of the Golden State back in the direction of sanity. So we're going to talk about some of those positive things too. But first, let's just be honest about the current state of California. So Carol, when people think and talk about California now, not back in the 60s when the mamas and the papas were talking about California dreaming, but when people talk about California now in 2020, what do they think?
A state that is truly out of control. A state that is deteriorating. A state that it's almost impossible to live in. When you think about California now, you think about wildfires and mudslides. You think about homelessness and the crazy, insane liberal policies that go on there that make it almost impossible for people to live there and survive. Mm-hmm. And so when you think about, I mean, we used to throw around about 20 years ago this phrase, California's the land of fruits and nuts. But it's truly become just not only a kooky state in a fun way, but it's become almost impossible to live there and survive. And so people don't want to go there. They don't want to invest their money there. Used to in the past, you had the gold rush and people rushed to California because of gold. And then people wanted to go to California to become famous because the Hollywood film industry was there.
And I think of the Dust Bowl days when many of our Oklahoman state predecessors risked everything because of the Dust Bowl. They had nothing to lose. And they traveled cross country to California as their land of opportunity.
Right. It was known not only just the United States, per se, but just California just by itself. And California used to have a budget and an economy larger than some countries. So it's got a huge population, but people can't live there anymore. It's just become almost impossible to have a farm, have a business, have a company, and employees. I just heard on the radio that they had recently passed a bill in California, for instance. It was supposed to be directed at Uber because Uber really doesn't have employees per se. They have independent contractors that drive their
private vehicles.
They're private vehicles, right. And so they don't have to provide them health care. So the wonderful legislators in California decided they were going to solve that problem, and they passed that bill that required Uber to give all their drivers health insurance, and but it's affecting other industries as well. It's affecting people who, freelance journalists and photographers. They don't want to work just for one company. They want to freelance. So it's basically penalizing them because they can't do what they used to do.
So entrepreneurs and independent contractors are basically penalized and forced into the socialistic model where they have to, provide health care, probably unemployment taxes, and all of those other, quote, benefits that will really basically put them out of business, won't it? Small business people.
And the independent contractors protested that we want to submit our work for lots of different people. And the state is telling you, oh, no, you can't do that. They'll take advantage of you. We want to be taken advantage of.
Right.
So it's very sad.
So how did the land of Ronald Reagan, our great 40th president, who was a 2-term governor, by the way, in California, prior to becoming one of the finest presidents we've ever had, how did the land of Ronald Reagan become the land of fruits and nuts?
Well, there are lots of people who have, political commentators who have different theories. From what I've been able to determine, and this is what I truly believe, is that Hollywood has been rather liberal always. I mean, they haven't really had much of a moral standard from the very beginning.
You're being very mild.
Well, I try to be diplomatic.
We have that fine, upstanding director. What was his name? Harvey something or other?
Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein.
Yes.
The epitome of morals and and self-control. One of the most powerful directors in Hollywood, facing years in jail because of his excesses.
Yes. So people wanted to, the film industry started there. It was very lucrative for people. But people wanted to become stars. They wanted to become famous, and lots of people would flock out there. And it was very well known in circles. Probably not talked about much, but very well known. That if you were a wannabe actress and you wanted a role in a film, you had to do certain things with either the film director or the producer.
The famous casting couch?
Yes, the famous casting couch.
Yes.
And so there's been a low moral standard anyway in California. And when you have a low moral standard, you have that infects or influences the rest of your life and the rest and how you look at life in general, and also affects your politics. So you have, people who've made millions and millions, maybe even billions of dollars in the film industry, and they have a very liberal, not conservative, not God-fearing view of life, but anti-godly view of life. So nature abhors a vacuum, so what fills that vacuum? And so
So it has a permeating effect on the culture as a whole, do you think?
Yes.
The Hollywood influence?
Yes, the Hollywood influence through the whole state. And so what do most of Hollywood actors and actresses and film directors, what do? They have lots of money. They can support politicians who have the same type of mindset and viewpoint that they want. And the longer this goes on, the more and more liberal, the more and more leftist it becomes. And I point out in the article that I think people would be really shocked, because you have people like Gene Kelly, Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, who were actually supporting communists, and it's quite shocking, quite shocking. So I think the Hollywood during World War II, they came out and were pretty patriotic in supporting the war effort.
Right. Some of the early directors were more pro-American, and the films expressed that. World War II, maybe prior to that.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, Charlton Heston said that when he worked on the Ten Commandments, the producer and directors of the film handed out New Testaments. Now, boy, you would not see that today at all.
And as we know, Cecil B. DeMille, the director of the Ten Commandments, both the 1924 and the 1954 version, was a Bible scholar.
Yes. Yes, and he's the one who passed out these little New Testaments, and Charlton Heston said it had a great effect upon him. So these are things that you don't have. It was rare even back then, and that's long gone. So you have these very liberal people who don't have really many morals or at all, if any, and they support very liberal causes and liberal politicians.
Another factor that we talked about before we started the program was the recent insurgency of Chinese money into Hollywood. And the little known fact is that many of the Hollywood studios now are owned by China, by Chinese oligarchs. And so that's going to influence the content of the films too, in terms of being anti-American. They're definitely not going to take a hard line on communism, since they're owned by communists. So you have that influence going on as well in Hollywood. And in California, the movie stars are considered royalty. There, in a way.
And a lot of Americans, that's what they do. They spend a lot of their lives following this actress or this actor and the movies that they're in, and dressing like them and acting like them. So Hollywood has a lot of influence.
Right, absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break, a quick time out now to hear from our sponsor. I just happen to have a bottle of Jingos with me, and this stuff really works. So Give a listen. We'll be right back. We are so excited to partner with a new commercial sponsor to help us with the cost of these podcasts. Our new sponsor is Jingos. Jingos is an ultra stain remover and odor eliminator. It attacks stains and odors and is environmentally and user-friendly. We use this in our house, and take it from me, this stuff really works. Plus, by buying Jingos, you not only help yourself, but also help us stay on the air. One satisfied customer writes, "Our dog Charlie came home after being sprayed by a skunk. I tried shampooing with tomato juice and several dog shampoos, but nothing worked. I sprayed him with a new product called Jingos, and the odor disappeared immediately. What an awesome product." That is from Eileen in Wisconsin. Please stay tuned for more details.
By Jingos, it's amazingly fresh and clean out here in beautiful New Zealand. G'day America, I'm Tarby, and I want to tell you about my new ultimate stain and odour remover, Jingos. My Jingos gunk gobblers will tackle stubborn organic stains and eliminate nasty stinking odours at the same time. Jingos effectively removes those little accidents like wine, coffee, dirt, blood, grass, even pet stains, and odours like fish, garlic, even skunk. Jingos is environmentally friendly, safe for use on fabrics, carpet, upholstery, and it works great as a laundry pre-soak on the worst pet or people accidents. Come on, America, what are you waiting for? Just go online and order your Jingos for $12.95 and get a 4-ounce travel pack free. Crikey, pay $19.95 and I'll double your order. That's 2 large Jingos and 2 travel packs for just $19.95. Blasted seagulls, where's my Jingos?
Well, we are now back with Carol Rushton as we continue to discuss how the Golden State has become one big mess. Well, we talked about the influence of Hollywood in California and beyond. Let's move on to this next question, and that is, how has the change in California's political sphere influenced the following policies negatively? We're going to talk about environmental management. We're going to talk about the homeless problem. We're going to talk about the business environment. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that a little bit. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about conditions in the public schools also. Mm-hmm. All of these things are affected by the political leadership and policies in the state of California. So let's talk first of all about environmental management. How is California doing in that regard?
Oh, wow. Well, they really... I mean, everybody's concerned about the environment. Of course, we want to be good stewards mm-hmm. of the property that we have and the earth, because God has given us that responsibility. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we want to be good stewards of mm-hmm. what God has given us. Mm-hmm. But God doesn't enter in the picture much in California. So you have lots of very, very strict environmental policies that basically do not make sense. Now, it used to be that when you would have, for instance, forest management, mm-hmm. you do have to do a certain amount of clearing out the brush, because mm-hmm. after so many years, brush accumulates, dead grasses accumulate, animals, mm-hmm. They die, and then you have trees that fall down or they die, and you have lots of dead wood, and mm-hmm. so there does need to be a certain amount of cleanup work mm-hmm. that every once in a while has to be done mm-hmm. in a forest. Mm-hmm. That is just proper management, mm-hmm. because if you don't, that can contribute to wildfires. Mm-hmm. For instance, mm-hmm. you have a thunderstorm, and of course you have lightning, mm-hmm. and that lightning strikes, or you have a careless camper mm-hmm. who, mm-hmm. These things can contribute to wildfires, mm-hmm. in which California has seen a lot of in the mm-hmm. last several years.
Seems like every year.
Yes, every year now. Mm-hmm. And that's because God forbid that anybody should just kind of construct a temporary road so they can get their vehicles in there and clean out those forests.
Right.
We don't want to do that because that would just be...
Mother Gaia might be upset
Yes.
if we tamper with her perfection.
Yes, so,
Yes.
they want everything is natural. They want everything to be natural. Well, nature then takes care of the things the way nature does. I mean, for instance, and I'll give you an example. Poison ivy is natural too, but I wouldn't want to get too close to it.
Right,
so
absolutely.
Just because something is natural doesn't mean it's always good.
Right.
So, you have to have proper forest management. And that
Plus, in
includes
some
clearing out the
forests, at
brush.
least not in California, but in some areas, they have controlled burning.
Right, they're supposed to.
So that, again, to take care of the dead wood and the brush that becomes very combustible, and it also encourages new growth.
Right.
So when you have, quote, privately managed areas, controlled burning is part of the stewardship of the environment.
Right.
So you're saying really these policies are not really good environmental policies.
No, and this is what has led to multiple wildfires over the last several years that have really devastated California. And then when the rains come, well, there's not a lot of grass or trees to hold the water. So you have these mudslides. So you have, and a lot of this is on the news because you'll see these big Hollywood mansions and the stars are concerned about, getting the fires too close to their mansions. And then they turn around a month or two later and they're concerned about, protecting
their
homes
mansions sliding down the hill.
So, and it's just these crazy environmental policies just are devastating to California.
Well, let's talk about an urban problem that's the worst in the country, and that is the homeless problem. In urban areas, San Francisco, notorious, Los Angeles,
yes.
50, 60,000 people just in Los Angeles who are homeless, living out on the street, living in tents, living in their vehicles. How do California's political policies encourage or result in homelessness?
Well, for one thing, again, you have maybe not directly causing this, but when you've got millionaire actors and directors and film producers and people who are making a lot of money, that has increased the property values. And so what a normal $200,000 house here in Oklahoma City would be, it'd be like 2 or 3 times that much. In California, if people can't afford it, and you're working 2 or 3 jobs, you can't, even then, you can't make it in
Plus,
California.
I've heard the environmentalists don't want new neighborhoods.
Well, no, because you have to tear down.
Yeah,
and
trees and stuff.
Yes.
So the existing homes, which are inadequate in terms of the numbers, they go up in value because the state of California doesn't allow new neighborhoods to be built, which is the normal solution. When you have an increase in population, you build a new neighborhood.
Yes, that's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And so you don't have a whole lot of new homes being built. I'm sure the very rich and famous have ways around that so they can get their new homes being built.
Oh, yes.
But, the average person on the street has no recourse. And so you have a domino effect that has a ripple effect throughout society and the culture in San Francisco. So you have a lot of people that are homeless. Some people are homeless because they want to be. Other people are homeless. I would think that, the solution would be, why don't you leave? Why don't you leave California and find a job someplace else?
Right.
But a lot of people, they'll stay there. And so they have these tent cities. Then they have, it's people are doing their bodily functions out on the street.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Anywhere they can.
Not against the law there.
And it's not, and so are they not enforcing the law? Now, technically in San Francisco, it's against the law to do stuff like that.
Okay.
But they don't enforce
Don't they
it.
allow thievery to go on without any kind of consequences either?
Oh,
if you're
yes.
a shoplifter?
Well, this affects the business climate, too, because number one, when you have homeless people who are doing their bodily functions out on the street, and then you have drug addicts who are, you have, just doing their using their needles and throwing those out on the street too. You have homeless people sleeping around your shop. Doesn't make for attracting shoppers to come into your grocery store, to come into your shop, or come into your company or business. So some businesses try to put up planters to keep them away, and so they're fighting that now. Californians are saying no, that's not fair. You shouldn't be doing that because that you should have more compassion on you should have more compassion on the homeless. Well, it's killing the business. So who wants to go into a business? And for instance, San Francisco was supposed to have this big conference here about a month or two ago. They lost that big conference.
Oh yeah, San Francisco used to be a prime convention destination, but that's going away.
It is, and it's so sad because Tony Bennett became very famous. Why I left my heart in San Francisco. Your golden sun will shine for me. Well, the sun may still be golden, but San Francisco is not a golden city anymore.
I hear he's heartbroken over San Francisco now.
Well,
he truly has left his heart there.
So it's just sad because you can't. Why in the world would you want to live someplace where you're having people who either can't work or don't want to work? They're doing their bodily functions just out on the street for everybody to see.
Plus, you have third world diseases that are now coming back because of the rat population. You got Ebola coming back.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what's going to happen when coronavirus starts sweeping through the homeless camps? I mean, I cannot imagine.
It is going to be, it's already very, very bad. So, and then you have the dirty needles, and then you also have a lot of meth addicts, and there will be women who will go from what I understand, homeless camp to homeless camp to homeless camp, trying to get their meth fix. And this doesn't help either.
Right.
So it's a deteriorating situation in California, and a lot of people have decided, I can't deal with this anymore. And so, we haven't talked about Proposition 47.
Yes, tell us about that.
Oh, this was such a brilliant idea by California legislators. They decided that to solve some of the problems in California, they would not prosecute people who stole under $950 worth of goods.
Oh.
So, but this is, of course, you have the unintended consequences that come along with things like that. So you have people now going in with calculators to stores, and they'll stop. They'll have bags and stuff, and they'll just take stuff off the racks or stuff off the shelves, throw it in a bag. They'll have their calculators. Okay, this is under $950. Let's go. They'll go and sell it, and they'll come back and get some more.
Wow. So how can a business owner continue to be in business when they have no control over their inventory and no support from law enforcement?
Right, because law enforcement can't control this, and I thought, I'm sure they had some good reasons why. Our cops are just too busy. So let's not.
The courts are all clogged.
So let's not deal with some of this petty stuff. But it's become it's an insane environment. You can't do business there.
Yeah, when laws are no longer enforced, they're no longer laws. And they're doing the same kind of craziness in New York. We'll have to do another article on New York because they're following the same liberal policies.
Sure.
And people are moving out of New York just like they're moving out of California.
Yes, and I from what I understand, California for the first time in many years is going to lose representatives now.
Right.
Because people have left.
Right. Yeah, there's a mass exodus out of California. That is the working people. So I guess as the illegals move in, and the homeless squat, the actual working people are moving out as quickly as they possibly can. And so they're being replaced. One quick question before we close today, Carol. Is there any hope for California? What do you have? What can you do to encourage our listeners in terms of California? Maybe they don't live there. Why should they care?
Why should they care? Number one, you don't want your state to become like California.
That's true.
You don't. You do not want this insanity.
And California's had that reputation that as it goes in California, so goes the rest of the country.
Yes, I mean, because, for instance, Hollywood movies, they have a lot of influence. You have, for instance, the television programs Will and Grace, and you have Brokeback Mountain. So you had this big push to normalize homosexuality and make it seem normal. And it has had a great influence. I don't think that we would have had the Supreme Court decision to legalize same-sex marriages if it hadn't been for Hollywood and some of the things, the movies and television programs they produced. So you don't want your state to become like California. So I think there's some things that you can do. Number one, of course, we always want to pray. We don't hate California, but we want, to save California. So you can always pray and pray. My father always said, God is still on the throne, and God is still on the throne, and prayer changes things. So we can always pray for revival, and that God would really convict people in California who are making these decisions and convict the populace and see if we can't turn this.
And there are good churches and Christian schools and colleges in California.
Yes.
We don't hear too much about them, but they're there. They're counterculture. So there is a godly remnant in California.
There is. And then we don't hate California, but you might want to make decisions when you're out purchasing products, go in your entertainment dollars, maybe seeing a Christian movie instead of a blockbuster action movie the California produces. Go see a Christian movie or a Christian documentary instead.
And there are some good films like that.
Yes, there are more and more Christian filmmakers are coming out. They're making excellent movies, excellent documentaries. Support things like that with your entertainment funds instead of some of these big movies. I mean, we don't want to, again, we don't hate California, but I think that people need to be wise about what their choices are. Products. When I go to the grocery store, I think twice about buying something if it says it's made in California. I want to buy things that are produced locally instead, or from someplace else. So these are things you can do, and you also had an idea as well.
Yes, there's a new movement. It's called the New California Movement, and basically it's a secession movement, and the desire is good patriotic leadership. They've had several constitutional conventions. Their hope is to become the 51st state, and something on the order of 52 out of the 58 counties in California are participating in this. So for our friends who may actually live in California and not be aware of this, you might want to go just Google the New California State. They have a great website, has a lot of information, has the rationale behind why they're trying to leave old California to escape the tyranny and become part of that movement. And they're hoping within 2 years to have a new state. Under obviously new leadership, conservative leadership. And so that is a constitutional remedy. It's not easy, but if you go to the website, the New California State, they can give you some details as to the strategies that they are pursuing to actually remove themselves from just the few liberal cities that actually control the state. Sacramento, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, those are the liberal enclaves. But when you get away from those areas, the people are pretty normal people.
Yes.
I mean, I have relatives that live in Northern California. They're God-fearing people. They're patriotic people. They love the Constitution. They love the country. And they are just as grieved as, I'm sure even more than we are, at what their state has become. So there is hope for Californians, and I like this new California state movement. Well, I think we're out of time for today.
We sure are. Didn't get near done what we wanted to.
We got a few things done, and I appreciate you coming on today to talk about your new article. And I just happen to have a copy of it with me here. And let me encourage our listeners to get a copy of this. It's called California, How Liberals, Progressives, Communists, and Illegals Turned the Golden State into One Big Rotten Mess. And you can obtain a copy of this, friends, by going to our website, www.swpm.us. You may obtain 5 copies for an offering of $5 or 25 copies for a $15 contribution. So just go to our website, go to our bookstore. Once you click on the bookstore, just type in the title. I'll give you the abbreviated form. California, How the Golden State Became One Big Rotten Mess. www.swpm.us. And we'll rush you as many copies as you would like of this informative article. So friends, thank you for joining us for today's podcast, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, this is David Schnitker. Thanks for listening.